You guys are good to go?
Okay. What is your last name and could you spell it?
McCarthy, capital M, small c, capital C-A-R-T-Y, Richard D. R.A. 16868-091, Specialist D5, Company D 40th Armor, 172nd Infantry Brigade, Mechanized, Fort Richardson, Alaska.
Awesome. Okay. What year were you born?
I was born May 19th, 1947, here in Jeff City. I attended St. Peter's Grade School, Elias High School, graduated in '65, and 2 days later I was in Motor Barber College in Kansas City, Missouri.
Nice.
Where did you live when you became part of the military?
I lived at New Bloomfield, Missouri.
What branch of service? Oh, we already said that. But.
Oh, no, you can go ahead with the Army.
Oh, what branch of service were you?
I was the Army. The Army back there then had what they called the draft. The draft started September 16th, 1940 for World War II. And there were 33 different classifications at that time for veterans. In the Vietnam area, there was only 22. And while a senior here at Elias, I turned 18. I registered at the post office. 2 days later, I brought a letter to our principal, and I was sent to Jefferson Barracks in St. Louis, where I was, seeing if I was physically fit. And in those days, if you had a heartbeat, you would be physically fit. The only people that got out at that time were if they had back trouble or missing a limb from birth or something. They couldn't have prostheses. And again, they had 22 classifications. The four most common was a 1A, that means you were ready and available. A 2S, that was you were a student in college and you had to the age of 24 to get a bachelor's science degree. If you did it earlier, your 1A came quicker. Then the next one was 4F. That means you cannot join them. There's something wrong with you mentally, physically, or whatever. Then the 4E, there were your conscientious objectors, those who objected to both combat and non-combat. They would not serve. That was the main four classifications of the 22.
Awesome.
When did you first start the service?
I was an apprentice barber here in Jeff City in 1965. I had a 2S when I was in barber college, and they didn't catch up with it for a while. And in February, I got the classification of 1A, so I went to the Fulton, Missouri was, my draft board in Callaway County was at Fulton. So I went over and talked to the people, and they said they had a number system then. They said I would be in the service in either 5 or 6 weeks. And I had only been barbering since November, and I went into the following week. I made an appointment in Jeff City with a Don Wilson. He was the head of the state draft board at the time. And I went up and he said, "What's the problem?" And I said, "Look, you're giving regular students to the age of 24 to get a degree. If they get it earlier, that's fine. But I said, I want to be a licensed, I don't want to have to start over again." Mm-hmm. And he said, "Well, I agree with you." He said, "I'll call your draft board." And anyhow, he called her, and so I drove from Jeff City back to Fulton, went in, and Miss Cloud said, "You went over my head." And I said, "Well, I don't think I went over your head. We didn't get along very well." She said, "You've got maybe 10 days and you'll be in the military." So immediately I got in my car and I came back to Jeff City and I visited with a recruiter. And he said, "Do you like to hunt and fish?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "How about Alaska?" He said, "I can guarantee you Alaska." And he said, "The MPs are shards up there. We need MPs." He said, "I'll guarantee you." I said, "I'll sign the paper." So we decided on a date and I signed the paper. So that's when I enlisted.
Wow. Where were you during basic?
I was at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. I did my 8 weeks there. And as I said earlier, I went to Elias and I played football. I never marched in a band. I raised my right hand at Jefferson Barracks April 30th of 1966. And that same day I was sent to Fort Leonard Wood and put in a company, gave him my fatigues and all that, and I could not march. The second day of marching, Fort Leonard Wood's all rocks, and the platoon sergeant grabbed me while we was marching, pulled me out. I won't say what he said, but started chewing on me. And he picked up a rock and he told me to undo my left pocket, so I did. And he said, see this rock? He said, I don't want to ever see you in a uniform without this rock being in your left pocket. From then on, I picked up my M14 and I started running around 5 platoons every day. On the second week there, the first sergeant come out and said, we're going to have a PT test, a physical training test. He said there's 10 exercises, 50 points maximum in each one, 500 points. He said the Army says you've got to have 300 to pass, but he said in this company, if you don't have 350 or above, you're a fat man and you will do PT before breakfast, lunch, and supper.
Wow.
He said you will do it. Well, the third week came, and guess what? In the 3rd platoon, McCarthy being in the middle, everything's alphabetized. I was the only guy in 3rd platoon to pass the PT test. The only one.
Wow.
So the platoon sergeant was really unhappy that of all people, why couldn't I have failed and I'd have to? So he talked with other drill sergeants, and one of the drill sergeants took our platoon, and that evening he learned me how to march. I mean, you know, it's left, right, left, but the first step is with your left. I was watching people's feet, and it's a 30-inch step. And in 2 days, I was marching and calling cadence because nobody had ever explained it. They just tell you get in line and march. I couldn't. But in 2 days, before the end of the week, I was platoon leader for the 3rd platoon. And upon graduation of basic training, they made me E2 as the only one in 3rd platoon to make E2 out of
That's
basic.
so cool.
Yeah.
Where were you sent after basic for advanced training?
I was sent to Fort Gordon, Georgia to be an MP. Like I said, you know, I had the papers to become a military policeman. And boy, MP, military police, I thought, now that it was nice. I mean, I love to hunt and I love to shoot pistols. Well, I got down there at Fort Gordon, Georgia. We got situated. They called us out, and by name and alphabetic, we formed I don't know how many rows. There's close to 370 AIT MPs there. Well, then a bus drove up, and this captain got out. He come up there and talked to our company commander and took over, and he said, I'm going to call a few names out, and when I call your name, grab your duffel bag, get on that bus over there. Well, I wasn't worried, but all of a sudden, McCarthy, Richard D., get on that bus. And I thought, oh my God, there was 8 of us called. And I didn't know, I thought, what's going on now? I got over on the bus, and he came back over, the 8 of us did, and he said, gentlemen, welcome. He said, you probably wonder what's going on. He said, you guys are leaders. And I thought, I was only 19 years old, you know, 19, barely 19. And he said, you're the only 8 people out of all them 370 some people that graduated E2 out of basic. But he said, you're going into the elite infantry training. He said, this is the elite. This is our second try. He said, the first try was non-volunteers. He said, the first time we took 200 soldiers from the infantry, put in elite, we didn't even have 100 to graduate. This time we're taking 300 people, and you 8 finished it out. Because we have 292 volunteers. You guys have only been in service 2 months. These guys are PFCs, E4s, and corporals. He said, they've been in a while. You all won't pass it, but he said, we got to fill it out. Well, I got into it and I thought, boy, this Alaska, because they said we was going to be sent to Vietnam as squad leaders. And we did. I mean, we was really trained. The first day, I got issued 2 weapons, an M14, the United States weapon, and an AK-15, the Vietnamese automatic weapon. I got a gray dress and a straw hat. One day, the first day, I was ambushing. The second day, I got ambushed. We also had to be leaders. We had to do exercise and command. And they had an exercise been, it was called the airborne squat, where you put your hands behind your head and your right foot forward and you go down and up. I could not do that. But in 300 people, you can kind of blend in. They can't. But when you get called to do that exercise and you're in charge of it, That's a different situation. You're up there, you can't mess up. And I was standing there, looking over at duty assignments, and I seen that, and here come another guy up there, and he said, "Oh gosh, that's what's the matter." He said, "Man, I got the 8-count push-up." What day? And we was the exact day. I said, "Can you do squats?" And he said, "I'm a pole climber from Georgia," meaning I guess he worked for the electric companies, you know. "Hey, you can do squats?" "Yeah." I said, "Well, I can do push-ups." So the evening before, this is when you change, you know, things around a little bit. We met. I took his dirty fatigue jacket. He took my dirty fatigue jacket. Next morning, we called up. You know, I called up, did the thing, took his name, whatever it was, I couldn't tell you anymore. Got up and I did the 8-count push. He got up and do the squats, and we both got good grades.
There you go.
And I mean, that's changing things. It's probably illegal, but you know, you adapt and overcome, I guess is what you say.
Yeah.
And we did it, and we were in our 7th week when the 8 of us got called in. I met my first general that was over this project. I was the second one to salute and stand at parade rest while we talked. And he said, "McCarthy," he said, "you 8 guys will pass." He said, "There's no doubt about it." But he said, "Well, I'm going to give you one time and one time only. You can say, I want to go back to being an MP, and you can go pack your bags, we'll put you on a bus, and you will go back and you wait, you know, for an MP class." And I said, "Sir, in all due respect, this is probably a great offer, and airborne you make a little more money, jump pay, but I said, as an MP, I might get shot in old Saigon, but I'm going to take my chance." So he said, "Okay, go." Because when I had that guarantee for Alaska, when I got stuck in there, I didn't call, I wrote a letter, because you don't get phones, you don't have TVs, you don't have newspapers, you don't have anything in them first 2-4 months of schools and stuff. You don't have anything, no communication from the outside. But I wrote my father, and he went down and talked to a recruiter, and he said, "Well, I'm sorry he was picked in that group. If he wouldn't have, he would have been." So I thought, well, this paper was useless, but I carried it the rest of my life, but I got to go back to him. 2 of them stayed. I don't know what happened to them, but I know they went to Vietnam. I hope they made it back as quietly, but 6 of us went back. And getting back over there, they picked me again because they said I had the highest score in the infantry over there. So they sent me to 2-week leadership school. So after that 2 weeks, when they got a new company, I was a platoon leader for the 3rd Platoon again in AIT, and getting that, I ended up graduating E3 out of AIT.
Wow.
At Fort Gordon.
Interesting. So after advanced training, you were an MP,
Uh-huh.
and then, so what was happening in the world when you were in the military?
Well, Vietnam was the war. Russia, China, and North Korea. We had people in Alaska, and we had people in South Korea. China, no. But I mean, okay, that's what was going on right there at that time.
Yeah. So did you always were you always in the United States?
No, I was
No.
in Alaska.
Right.
I mean, it's part of the United States.
Right. Okay. Gotcha.
How long did you serve in the military for?
I served 2 years, 11 months, and 19 days. You won't forget them. Just like when I gave you at the beginning my name, your service number, you'll never forget that.
Yeah.
The Army at the time had RA, which I was, that means regular Army, I volunteered. US, because of the draft, they were US's. Then, when you're in there, they know your RA or US. In basic training, they made it quite obvious. When they ask you your Army, no, RA 1686.091, when you said NG, them drill sergeants would say no guts, no glory. That was National Guard, because after you got done, in the 6 years you spent, you just spent a little over a year total. Instead, the US's were 2 and RAs were either 3 or 4 years. Then you had enlisted reserves in the Army Reserves. They called them weekend warriors, because you know, they were like the guards. They were only going to spend a little over a year in the 6 years. And you had, after your basic and AIT, you didn't have to worry about a 2-week drill because that was that. You only had your, in the first year, you only had your basic and AIT, then a weekend a month. Then the next 5 years, you had a 2-week drill and once a month weekend. So you spend very few days, you know what I mean? And you were home working your job and everything. Whereas the USNRAs, you were away.
What was the reason for you to get out of the military?
I did my 3-year application. You know, they wanted me to stay because I made E5 in 14 months. Being an MP, you got a classification. You got classified, secret, or top secret. I don't know how I got it. I'm from Jeff City, Missouri. I never was in any trouble. I was 18 years old when I went in. Somehow in AIT, upon graduation, I got a secret classification. When I arrived at Anchorage, USARAL, United States Army, Alaska, to be an MP, I stayed a night, I got indoctrinated, and the next day I got on a bus and they sent me to the 172nd Infantry Brigade. There, I thought, oh God, infantry. I've been through the 7 weeks in Alaska, infantry, snow, waist high. Oh, sleeping. And I got over there to personnel. I was the PFC back then upon graduating AIT. So I got to go first up there, and I said to the personnel, the 176, I said, there's got to be something besides infantry. He said, there's armory and artillery. Well, I knew what artillery was, but my father served in World War II in artillery. So I said, what's armory? He said, can you drive a tank? Well, being from the country on a farm, I drove trucks, tractors, and everything there was. I said, I can drive anything you got. So they sent me to 40th Armor as a driver. On the first day going down to the motor pool with my sergeant, he said, hop up there and start it up. Well, I seen the hole open under the gun tube, and I thought, well, that's got to be where drivers at. So I climbed in there and got in the seat, looked over there, and everything's wore off. This was an antique tank. The 41 was antique. It was Korean War tank. I looked around, I couldn't find no knobs, keys. He said, start. I said, where's the key at, or where's the button I pull? He said, well, you're a driver. I said, look, I'm an MP. I never seen a tank before till this first one I ever been in. He hopped up there and he showed me the switch was on and off. You couldn't read it, so I flipped it on, and there's 2 mags you pull together and started the tank. So that's what I did. I drove. He started with me, backed up, and this means hold this track and turn this way. This means hold this track and turn that way. You know, so I knew, I got to where I drove a tank. That's what, then I became a gunner later on.
That's cool.
That's very cool. During the time of the war, what engagements can you remember?
Okay, being in Alaska, like I said, we were next to Russia. We had, in the dead of winter, Fort Wainwright was colder than Fort Richardson. Fort Greely was the coldest part of Alaska. It was an Arctic test zone, Fort Greely was. I was in 3 maneuvers because of classification. I was always in the advanced party where I had to be up there to receive tanks, receive stuff. And we went up there to test our tanks, and with the rest of the infantry on the ground, and the coldest of the 3 years I was there was one time it was 72 below. We were sleeping in tents. We had no idea what the wind chill factor was. You leave your trucks and your tanks run 24 hours a day. I had to go to schools to be up there to be an advanced party to know what was going on. And I didn't know that. I know the tires are different today. We got steel belts and all these new tires, but in the mid-60s, at 50 below, if you let a truck sit all day, if it hit a stone, a tire could just break like glass. Because on the school I went to understand this stuff, they brought a tire out in an 8-pound sledge, and that tire broke like glass because it was frozen, set too long. So trucks had to be moved, 10 feet far. Just keep backing them up before lead them run, but keep moving them tires. and then they wouldn't break. A plane couldn't land at Fairbanks, that was the nearest up north, at 50 below, because if it didn't make a perfect land, the wings could snap, tires could break. So there was times when we was up there longer because they couldn't bring troops up in planes, where we sat out there at 50 below keeping these things running. Now tracks you don't have to worry about, they're steel and bolts, you know, I mean, we kept them running, shut them off, checked oil, if it needed oil, put it on, start back up and let them run, just keep fueling them up, that's all we did. We were testing if Russia ever attacked us, that's what it was. Then back at Fort Richardson, the 3rd platoon was, there's 4 platoons, headquarters, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. 3rd platoon did all the field work. We were called on alerts, where they call you out in the middle of the night to get your tanks and go out to the field. And it was in January of '66. I hadn't been a tank driver, but from October when I got to Alaska until January. I never was lead tank, but that night I was the lead tank. I mean, I was leading the other 5 tanks. We were supposed to do a night fire mission. Every other tank, the 2nd and 4th tanks had 24-inch spotlights on them, which would light up a lot a long distance. And I was leading, and it was kind of a moonlight night. And there was a Jeep, and the first lieutenant got out from the infantry, stopped me, and we talked. And on our helmets, you know, forward I could talk to people in my tank, to the rear I could talk to the whole world. I mean, to all the other tanks. And he told me, he said, look, he said, you're going to be finding the 60th Infantry out there to your left. You know, you make a left, go on out there, and they'll be next to the woods. I said, okay. I said, how far? And he said, oh, about a half mile. So I told all the other 4 tanks, the whole world, you know, what was going on. And I didn't even go a quarter mile. And being from a farm, something wasn't right. I stopped, and now it's 35 below, all your legs are froze and everything. And our tank commander, everybody's buttoned up except the 5 drivers with our heads out seeing where we're going. There are no lights. You ain't allowed to drive with lights because the enemy can see you. So anyhow, I stopped, and he said, why are you stopping? I said, and I turned it on the whole world. I said, I think we're on a lake. And he said, let me get my map. And so he got his map out, and he said, there's no lake here. He knew where we were supposed to go, you know. Yeah. Anyhow, I said, Sarge, we're on a lake. And I kept telling him that, you know, but he said drive. So you can't tell which direction I'm going, you know. So I started turning to my left, and I kept turning. I didn't want to get very far out on this thing.
Right.
So I seen a woods over there, and I got next to that woods, and there no infantry. So then I turned back, and I wasn't very far from the edge of the woods. And going on down, when the 4th tank, when we got all in line, tanks vibrate. You don't ever take, if you want to test a bridge, you put tracks on there and they shake, and that's, see if, well, I was lead tank and I broke through. I was completely under. A tank is 10 to 11 feet tall. The guys in the turret, I mean, I was out and exposed naturally. When that 58,000 pounds broke through, it dropped just like that. Well, the gunner, the tank commander, and the loader, they clawed up on top and jumped over on the ice. The other tanks, seeing what happened, they stopped and they all ran up there. I had to figure a way to get out of that thing. You know, I'm sitting down in a hole, and I feel where I come out, then I'm feeling around trying to find a gun tube to grab a hold of something, because the front of it's a big slant. If I slip off of that, I'm gone. So I get out, shocked, but Richard Gazier, he was a PFC, he was a good friend of mine. He was a tank behind me. He jumped from the ice on our tank. When I come through, he pulled me up, and he pulled me on the ice, got around me, called, and they got a PC, and I went back to the command post where I met our brigade commander, the colonel, and I started getting chewed out why I wasted a $500,000 tank. And then finally the communications officer heard my conversation. He brought him over there. And to make a long story short, the first lieutenant from infantry was at the wrong place. We were supposed to be about 3 miles farther down in a different valley, not on this lake. He could not read a map. And to come find out, I guess something did happen to him. I don't know what. I don't know where he went or what he did. But it was his fault that we sank. But I know there is a God, because I got to Alaska and I got into armor, but I am afraid to say if it wouldn't have been me out there, if it had been a guy from New Jersey, not used to, and it was snow, but you can see the different heights of snow with weeds and stuff, you know what I mean? It wasn't smooth. And when you get on something smooth, that lake was no telling how many feet deep out there. All 5 tanks would have went under and there'd been 20 casualties that night if we'd have went straight on out there listening to this guy. But I mean, thank God, you know, I realized things. But people from the South, like I said, being an MP, I was in charge of all drivers getting their phase 2 winter driving. I had to take them out. Some guys I passed because I wouldn't ride with them again. They were South. They froze on ice and snow. They hit things. And I said, never again will I ride with you, so you pass. You kill somebody or somebody else, not me.
What do you remember most about your time in the service?
I'll give you a letter that our XO at the time, we were going to be, the 172nd Infantry Brigade in 67 was ordered and called to Vietnam. And Company 40th Armor, 37th Field Artillery, and 5 62nd Combat Engineers made up, and the 23rd Airborne, excuse me, made up the 172nd Infantry Brigade mechanized. Well, tanks and 105 self-propelled howitzers and your dozers and all that stuff's big. You don't put them on planes and fly them like you do troop soldiers with their M14. And PCs don't weigh anything because it just carries 11 boys usually.
Right.
So I mean they're not heavy. So they sent the 60th and 23rd over to Vietnam, and this was in January, you know, and it's 20, 30 below. These guys get to Vietnam where it's humid, hot, sultry. We're repainting our tanks, rechanging oils for, you know, in the wintertime you use, we call sewing machine oil. So thin, but it's still, so cold it is, it lubricates the engine. You don't use 30 weights like you do in the summertime. We had to repaint them from white and light blue and gray to dull black, dull green, dull gray, and dull tan, you know what I mean? We had to repaint the things. And while we was getting this done, I looked over and there was 5 buildings of the 60th. That was the biggest unit of them all. 23rd Airborne was pretty good size, but they weren't 6 buildings. And I said, man, look, the Army's, they're lit up. I mean, what's going on? And we got a new unit over there. The next day we went to the motor pool. They were in back as the infantry, and there they were. They got over there, and because they weren't acclimated for the weather, they couldn't handle it. And since the planes were still there getting refueled and getting assigned, they just brought them all back. So our orders from Vietnam got canceled. But an interesting paper I'm going to give you is our XO wrote Lyndon Baines Johnson a letter, and Lyndon Baines gave it to a major general, that's 2 steps up, for him to overlook. And the first one he wrote back, he said, your soldiers suck it up. These old tanks that I got pictures of in here of you, they only had a life of 50 hours. They were old, they were obsolete, and you couldn't get parts from them. We waited sometime months for a part on a tank to get it to make it run. And in Vietnam, 50 hours is 2 days and 2 hours. We had been stuck out there, broke down, and we wouldn't have made it. I mean, he said, you're gonna have to give us big a tank. And then we got the second letter from the Major General, where we got the Sheridan Shillelagh tank that being a classified, I mean, you can have in top secret. People that use that tank had to have a security clearance. And they asked me to gun on that tank. I was the gunner on one of the 5 tanks. They sent 5 tanks to Fort Hood, Texas, and 5 tanks to Anchorage, Alaska. They got 20 personnel to I guess we volunteered. They asked me, and I thought it was kind of neat to shoot a bigger gun, something new. Okay, the tanks all look like, let's say, an Impala Chevy. Let's say the Impala Chevys are all green. They all got the same taillights and, windshield. Right. But the tank had 5 different motors from a Cummins, International, Detroit. I don't know all the engines. I'm not a 5 different transmissions, 5 different style of tracks. The shocks, sprockets, rollers, and the gun tubes were all different. This tank was airborne, amphibious. That means it could be dropped from the air. It was fast, but it was lightweight with a 6-inch gun, 152 millimeter gun, plus a 50 and a 7.62 machine gun from inside. It was equipped, and out of my tank, the only thing that year that was any good was the gun tube. I had a shallow key missile. This was the first tanks that could shoot a missile on the move and hit a target. I mean, I could be moving, the tank could be moving that I was shooting at, and I could still hit it. Instead of having crosshairs and the distance finder, you had a dot. And they were that infrared or a guided the missile. And this was the first tank that had a jolly stick, I call it, down, down, up, up, right, right. Well, the old tanks I had to crank and go up this way. This was unique, and being a gunner, that it had a flat trajectory of 3,000 yards. We had to shoot 40 rounds a day and put 10,000 miles on this tank in a year. Well, after a couple weeks, we seen we weren't getting the miles because we was only working 9 to 10 hours. So, as a gunner, I gunned, the driver went with me, we went, I shot my 40 rounds. Maybe once a month I shot 10 missiles or so, because missiles were expensive. Target practice ammo was cheap, but the missiles were exact, so you didn't have to worry about them. So I fired my 40 at 4 targets, 10 rounds each, and growing up a farm, hunting was about, because I didn't have neighbors, I did a lot of hunting. I got an award for being, you could put 10 6-inch rounds in a steel pot. That was the steel pot that we had to wear over our helmet liner, you know, in case you shot it with steel. I could put 10 rounds 90% of the time inside where you'd never see a shell. Because they come out and check me. A lot of times I couldn't believe it because they thought I was shooting off somewhere else. When they followed it, and my gun tube, the only reason it was the best because we had the shallow key. All gun tubes usually have circles, lines to the right, so the round goes up in this way, you don't see it, but the gun tube, the missile had a key, and mine was the same depth as the riflings, but the other 4 tanks had just a smidge bigger, and the shallowest, or the one with the most depth was, it cracked in that area there because once a week they would photograph that, check for cracks in the gun tube, make sure it didn't explode or something. And the one with the deepest key cracked, and that was the only thing. My transmissions, tracks, none of them were kept. The only thing was kept on that tank was the gun tube. And I was the first guy to float this tank. As I say, we broke up. I wasn't the tank commander, but we had dignitaries from Washington, D.C. to see this tank because it was a test thing, and it was during the summer. And I put my life jacket on, the driver put his on, and we got out there and we secured this tank, and we went out and they'd tell me to turn right, and I'd tell them turn right, turn left, back up, make circles, whatever they wanted to do, and we came back. We did it. And the second tank, the gunner was there, and our gunner, he was a lifer, I wasn't. And I said, you know, you better do. He said, look, I'm in charge of this tank. I said, okay, and I just backed off. He got out there with one general, a lot of representatives and senators from D.C., and he sunk. And it was kind of funny seeing all them little orange things popping around. It wasn't funny, but if he'd have listened, he wouldn't have sunk. But I did feel good that I was first. And they didn't want to go out there with me because nobody would see it, but if you'd have done it right, it worked. But he just, you know, just one of them guys that had a chip on his shoulder.
Right. What qualities did you believe you carried from the military to where you are today?
Okay, I was a barber before I went in. And in Missouri here, this area in the 60s, it was mainly settled by Germans. And when I got in the Army, we had all nationalities. My unit and all infantry units was probably 60% white, 40% black and Hispanic and Puerto Rican and Philippine, you know, on that 40 right there. So, being a barber, I mean, I come back with respect, and yes ma'am, no ma'am, and all this stuff, yes sir, no sir. But being a barber, I cut Italian hair, the wavy hair. I cut the Puerto Rican, and I cut the black hair. And I had I'd seen it done because in '65 under Lyndon Baines Johnson, when I was in Moeller Barber College up there, I and another student from the white school was sent to the black school, and 2 blacks were sent to the white school. And I never cut one. I shaved a lot of black people, but they never let me cut their hair. But I watched the black, they cut down instead of up like a white person. And that really helped me with my trade, because Jeff City now has got your Hispanics, you got your blacks, and you got Italians. And the wavy hair, it's really particular, because if you cut a wave wrong, it sticks out like Dagwood bumstick. And I learned that through the military. So it helped me in my profession really well. I mean, because when I took my test, they wanted me to go get a blonde. I brought my dad, and he had wavy hair, and they said, you don't want him, you won't pass. But I learned through that, right? It really, in my profession, it made me a lot better barber, all these people.
Oh, that's cool.
Yes, very.
What are your most enduring memories of your time in the Army?
Well, like I said, it was when I got a test, that Sheridan Shillelagh tank.
Mm-hmm.
It was to be honored. I told them at the end, the gun was good, but it's going to get a lot of people killed in Vietnam. It's too light, 17 ton, and you hit a landmine. It was the armament that hit you direct, that wall there is thick, and it'll glance off. But your undercarriage, the tanks I were in, that I was in before, what you'll see, you had to have a floor jack. It was called an escape hatch. You could turn the turret by hand, and everybody could crawl through that hole and get out in the grass, instead of climbing out and being picked off by snipers. You could crawl under. This tank had 2 canvas straps, and we used to get the poles we had to clean our gun tubes, you know what I mean? We used to play as Sir Lancelot, with them long sticks, and like that, but they were so light. And I said, and that's what happened to him. But that Sheridan Shillelagh tank today, there's a picture of it. It's in February 13, I think. It's one of the pictures I'll leave you there. It's in a parade here in Jeff City. It's still used by the airborne, because airborne can drop with it. It's fast. It's got a big gun. It's amphibious, can float a stream. And what it is, it's probably, we're talking 60, right at the first of 68 when we got it. To now, that's 40 years, that tank. No time. I mean, the Abrams still around, but I mean, that's our main battle. That's a big thing. And I got to go into one of them one time. Out at Ike Skelton, they had one, and one of my customers out there said, Rich, I said, I've never been one. He said, I'll let you go in one. You can't bring a camera. I can take a picture of the outside, but I couldn't take pictures of the inside or anything. But I did get to go into the tank out there, and it's a machine. It really is. It is indestructible.
Wow.
Wow. Do you ever get back together with the people you served with?
Yes, we do. In next month, in a few days, I'll be going to Biloxi, Mississippi.
Ooh.
The outfit I serve with, we've gotten together for 9 straight years. This will be our 2nd year to Mississippi. We've been to Florida 2 years, Alaska 1 year. I entertained them here in 2014. I had them come to Jeff City. I've had many reunions from guys from Nebraska, Tennessee, Iowa, Georgia. They'll come up to my place and spend a couple days, and we'll just shoot the breeze. Not the whole, because a lot of them are from New Jersey, Detroit, and all that. And Illinois, they would somebody said they're coming up, I'd make a few phone calls, and they'd come up 1 or 2 days, and we'd have a mini reunion. But New Jersey, Ohio, Tennessee, and probably next year, I've contacted a group that sets up reunions for military, and anyhow, they all want to go to Branson. And for the price, I called and got a hold, I can't think of the name of the group, but for like $450, we get 4 nights. And we get I want to take them to, when I was called Dolly's Stampede. It can't be called Dixie Stampede anymore.
Right, yeah.
We'll go to that. When I wanted to take them on the Branson Belle, see the lake. Then I wanted them to see Silver Dollar City.
Yes.
Then that one night we got free, the hotel is gonna serve us an evening meal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like $450. Then I asked if we wanted to be drove every place, and that'd be $100 more. But we won't do that because nobody will get lost in Branson. You know, she said if I get more people, you know, we get a full bus, the cost would go down a lot. So I might be hosting again next year, or this group can take us anywhere in the United States we want to go. They can set up prices, and they can usually get us a better price than what we can do on our own.
That's a lot of fun.
That's cool.
Did you say you earned some medals?
Well, I'll start with, here is my first, well not my first, one of my payroll records. As a private E1, I got $87.70 for a month, of which, after all my deductions, I got $47.72. I got, they can't give you change, they just give you cash. So the next time my $72 was added to my $87.72. Then the most important record is a DD-214. It tells all about you. Y'all can have it. That was my first pay record. This is the DD-214 that you keep for your life, because the VA, if you go into, I use the VA at Columbia, I use the VA here in Jeff City, they've got all this, and this tells all about me.
Cool.
This right here is when I joined the Army, April 30th, was the guarantee for Alaska, which then I got to go to Alaska, but I didn't get MPs. I got infantry. I did end up there, but we were going to Vietnam. You know, our company twice I was going to be, so I enlisted, but there's really no guarantees. If you luck out, that's fine. And I lucked out. I did twice in that elite infantry, then with the 172nd and 2nd. I'd only been in a year, you know, I'd been 19 or 20 at the most with an old tank that wouldn't hold up.
Right.
Here is my card for my gas mask. When you had to field, you had to have a gas mask, and I carried as a gunner, you carried a .45 pistol. We didn't have the truck drivers had the M14s and that stuff, but any tanker, we had what they called a grease gun, which was a .45 that shot 30 rounds in the blink of an eye. It was a grease gun. There was no safety on it. When you pull the trigger, 30 rounds were gone, and that was it. There is no safety. And you had to be a man to hold that thing. But it shot 30 rounds in no time. And after I made E5 in 14 months, I got to become a non-commissioned officer, E5. So there's my card to the open mess. Well, it wasn't open. You had to pay for steak dinners and stuff, but you go and drink instead of at the EM Club, you know, where you get your 3-2 beer.
Is that a copy?
Yeah, they can have that. Here is the first tanks, the M41A1s. This is a picture taken. They were 76 millimeter. It had a 50 cal, and that little hole right there was the 30 cal. It was a Browning 30 cal automatic. To me, it was better than that 7.62 308, whatever they want to call it, that we had in these tanks. This 30 cal, when the infantry got the 7.62, this 30 cal, but it sand, dust, rain, it was jamming all the time. But this Browning 30 cal that's inside here that the infantry carried before would never, the only thing you had to set head spacing timing, both in the 50 and the cal. If it wasn't set right, it'd go pop, pop, till you got it set right. You had to set it by hand. But once you set it, you could melt a barrel with them guns.
Very cool.
Here was this picture of the Sheridan tank, and it was January 15th. It was probably inauguration or something right there. That was the tank I tested. That was the 152 millimeter. And up here said a 50 cal, and inside there was the 7.62 automatic. And on the side we had grenade launchers. That particular gun, what they liked about it is what they had a new round called a beehive round. A beehive round at 400 yards, it shot darts, 1.25 inches. They were that titanium hard steel with 4 feathers molded into them, steel feathers, you know what, it was a pressed thing, and very sharp. They were interlocked this way, point, point, feather, feather, and they started out one and went around to a 6-inch circle. It was heavy, and I don't know how many darts it had. But at 400 yards, at a 100-yard football field, it would put a dart every 6 inches. Virtually impossible to live through. That's if you was getting overrun and your tank was broke down. You put that down and you shot, and anything in there, it would penetrate a dog. But after 400 yards, it's like a shotgun. The pellets would start falling off. But it was very effective. Now the other 2 rounds was your heat round, high explosive anti-tank, and your quick and delayed fuse round. A quick is when the infantry was in a woods and you had a screwdriver. You put it on quick or delayed, QL or D. Delayed, if they were in the trenches or in foxholes, you shot it, it would blow up in the ground and crush them even in the ground. Super quick, if they were in the woods, the first limit hit, that shrapnel just went everywhere and destroyed people. And like the missile.
Do you need a copy of that one?
Huh?
Do you need a copy of that?
No, oh, I got an
You got
extra
this
one.
one? We can
Yeah.
have this one? Okay.
And here's all about the 40th Armor. Here's our crest.
Ooh.
You wore it on your shoulders, and on your service cap you wore it up here. It was by force and valor. It tells you everything, the institution of the 40th Armor, and all about it.
That's good too, because it has.
Yeah.
highlights.
Right.
Here's one of my first certificates of training. After I got out of that elite infantry school down at Fort Gordon, Georgia, I said I was the #1 graduate. They sent me to a leadership school for 2 weeks where I was a made squad leader for 3rd Platoon right there.
Very cool.
Here's another certificate. It was for radio telephone procedure course 67/8, you know, USARL, United States Army Last Signal School, where I was a spec for, and like I said, I learned how to do all the procedures because I got the clearance right there. And every school brigade had to have a projectionist. Well, I had to go to 40-hour school, and our projections were the old 18 or 16-inch reels. I had to be able to set them up, sound, and go wherever a commander told me to show films to what's happening, you know what I mean. So I got that, you know, 40-hour projection, March 1 through 7 of '67 right there. Next thing is, like I said, our company, back in them days, I completed the Chemical, Biological, Radiological Specialist Course 68-1, given at the United States Army, Alaska CBR School, Fort Richland, last September 18th through the 6th of October. I attended to where I become the CBR NCO for 40th Armor. I had to make sure all the gas masks and everything in case of gas war. I was given that honor to do. Then the Sheridan Shillelagh tank came out. This is dated 5 through 9 of 1968, where since I had the classification, I went to the Shillelagh Operator Organization New Equipment Training of the AR/AAV 1551. That was the training tank right there. Then, like I said, told you earlier, there was 3 main shell shot: the heat, the super quick and delayed, and beehive round. I had to take a 4-hour course where I could recognize by sight, and boxes, you know, they all were numbered. and they had to be placed certain place, because a lot of times I had to be there when they got train loads of ammunition to unload them in a bunker. And all three were in your TP round, target practice, you know,
Yeah.
were placed. You didn't want to grab the wrong round, or the wrong box, because, you know, when you load them a tank, if they take them boxes out, you didn't want a heat round or a high explosive round shooting at a target and somebody be behind it.
Right.
And my father said, when you get in the Army, they're going to want you to become an officer. And I really didn't think, but this was 3 February of 67. I was still a PFC, and Colonel Leary, the brigade commander of infantry, I guess I'd been through some of these schools, and I got a letter from him wanting me to think about becoming an officer. And listen to my father. If you think it over today, it probably would have been the smart thing to do. You know, now to be an officer, you got to have a college degree. You just don't be. Back in them days, the infantry, you had. That's why there wasn't many classifications, because a lot of these guys had records. A lot of them got drafted because they were in trouble. You either go to the Army, go to prison, and that's where your infantry and all this comes from. May of 26, when I made sergeant, I graduated. I was picked at the last minute to go to the 9th honor class, USRO Non-Commissioned Officers Academy. I done a motor pool, and it said the old man went to see, and that's our company commander. They called him the old man. So I go up there, and he said, McCarthy, go take a shower and get your bag packed and put your Class A's on. You're going non-com school. What? I had no idea. So, oh God, now the other guy that was going, it was picked, he was a lifer. I mean, so he and I went, and we were in the same room. We had 2 guys to a room, 300 soldiers. You know. My voice is loud, everybody hears me. And we got up there, and we had to give classes. We had to do all this stuff. And I felt so bad when they was calling out #1 grad. I figured I'd just graduate. All of a sudden, they said, 9th honor graduate Richard D. McCarthy, Sergeant. I said, oh God. And he was sitting right next to me, and I thought, oh God, now this guy here, you know, he worked so hard, and it was my voice, and they could hear me in my classes, you know. We had to give classes on things, you know. First class I had to give it was on unwrapping of a gun wrap, chewing gum wrapper for 15 minutes. I had to stand from it, you couldn't put your hands behind your back. I won't say what they said and all this stuff. But you know, you had to talk and do this without any blackboards. For 15 minutes, I'd unwrap a gun wrapper. You know, wow. But that was my first talk there. But my voice, and you know, being in shape, I graduated 9th, and I come back, and all of a sudden they said Tom Ward 10th, and he was the guy with me. And I said, oh, thank God. Thank God. If he wouldn't have made it, and I'd have made that. But coming back, I told him if there was only one sergeant slot, and he would be the F5. I said, Tom, I'm not staying in this thing. You can have it, you know what I mean? But I said, if you try to overrank me, because sergeant was over a specialist, you know what I mean? I said, if you ever try to bug me, I'll whip your rear. That ain't going to happen, you know? And he never did. He never did full rank on me. But I don't know this guy. He was Brigadier General of the United States Command. He's probably back in D.C. He wrote me a nice letter, said to put in your files about graduating 9th. And Colonel Leary, you know, I guess it was sent to him. Then he sent me a letter, and it's not dated, so. No, it was. It's dated June 8th of 67, so I guess he got the letter and then thought he better do something about it. Then, not the last but least, was our XO's letter to Lyndon Baines Johnson telling about this old 41 tank you've seen. And Lyndon Baines sent it to a major general, that's 2-star, Henry A. Mealy, Jr. And basically the first letter just says, kind of suck it up, you know. You're not going to get different tanks and this stuff. But this before they went, and when they went, they come back because you can't go over there from below 0 temperatures. Your body's gotta get acclimated. And the Army found out back in them days, they did things without thinking. They told us we'd have to go to Fort Gordon, Georgia, and at least 4 months in the hot summer sun to get acclimated till you go to Vietnam. Or, you know, Fort Hood, Texas, something like that, but it had to be warm climate, not the cold. But then later on, we got a letter said we were gonna get these tanks. You know, that next year we will get these 5 tanks. And Tom got his wishes. We got some new tanks, and we did not have to go to Vietnam there.
Very cool.
And the last one in 14, it says friendship that lasts a lifetime. That's when I hosted my group of Company D 40th Armor here at Jeff City.
Aw,
That's so cool.
all right.
And then your book, you were gonna tell them.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
this book right here, I can't give it to you because I got to give it back to
Yeah,
the guy.
that's right, that's right.
It's about Heart of a Veteran. There's 10 different stories in this. Jordan House, she's a licensed massage therapist in Illinois, but she works with soldiers with post-traumatic stress disorder and traumatic brain injuries. And they spill out to her. And she thought it would be nice. She worked with this Robert Canine, and he is at Columbia, Missouri. He's over at the VA hospital now. He had 11 years in the Army when he was sent to Afghanistan. And the Afghanis take shells that don't explode, and they make buzz bombs out of them. Now, one thing I didn't like about airborne was if you shoot a white phosphorus shell and it explodes up in the air, that nylon parachute will melt and you will come down real quick. I mean, when you're being dropped, they shoot white phosphorus in and then clouds go up, and if you hit in that cloud, your nylon's gone, you're gone.
Yeah.
But this white phosphorus also cuts metal. That's what your heat rounds are made of. It's got white phosphorus and it penetrates through the tank and blows all the munitions up inside and everybody's gone. But this guy was driving a truck when this bee ate through his door, it ate both legs off beneath the knees and went out through the other door. He spent 4 years in the hospital, then 4 years he was alcoholic and couldn't, then all of a sudden he got over it. Now he's helping veterans right here.
That's
I got to
awesome.
take it back tonight. I don't know it. It's got, you know, it's only one guy from World War II, I think one from Korea, maybe one from Vietnam, and 7 from the Desert Storm to the present day.
Wow.
But and this book right here, in the 3 years I had 3 company commanders. Howard Lewis is featured in this book. He went to Norwich University back in New Jersey. The XO that wrote the letter to President Johnson also graduated from Norwich University, but at a later date. They both went to the same school, and they both were my company commanders. Howard Lewis, though, got sent to Vietnam. And in Vietnam, he got close to God. And it was hell. And in there, he's got letters and pictures. I need this bag taken back because my company commander at the time, I had 3. Howard Lewis, Richard Murdoch, and Thomas Norton. And Thomas Norton, I can't believe, he was a company commander, and he fraternizes with us enlisted men. He was one of the greatest commanders there ever was, because usually officers and sergeants don't fraternize. They got their group, and but he is just one of the guys. He's a great, great man. He was intelligent, and he got us this book because he graduated. He said, "Look, I got an Army unit. Can I have some?" And they said yes. And I've got the pages marked. Well, let's see, all these papers right here. Oh, this last one, I'll put them in order if I can.
That's all right.
And it'll tell you the pages where he's at right there. This is